Okay, so it's 7:05 now. I guess we'll get started with the class. So let me just move the chat to the side. Okay. Before we start, I don't want to say anything, or do you want to just go? Move this over here. All right. So in this week, in the second week of the neuroscience class, we will go over the brain and the spinal cord. So yeah, in case you missed the last week or you missed any other weeks, just to know, on the Kid Teach Kid website, you can find the resource information that I post in the class, so you can catch up. In case you missed the previous class or you want to refresh of the, oh, so you missed last week. Okay, so that's fine. On the Kid Teach Kid website, you can find the actual Zoom that we used, so it's fine. And just to know what we did, we learned about the fascinating properties of the small structures of the nervous system, or the neuron. And these microscopic structures help to transmit the electrical signals that we have throughout our brain. The principles we learned then are the building blocks of the lessons to come. In this class, however, we will cover the visible parts that you can see of your brain and your spinal cord. So in case you don't know what the spinal cord is, it's just a cord that runs down your spine, and it carries impulses to go to your muscles, and it carries impulses to carry for your sensors. But we'll cover all this in this. So first, to give an overview of the brain. It is hard to argue against the fact that the human brain is the most complex object in the universe. That's because it can do what a lot of other different objects can't. For example, it can learn things really quickly, which a lot of artificial intelligence and different machines have been trying to replicate. It can also help carry the information we see from our eyes and then carry that up and help us see an actual image. And then it can also help us move and do all these other complex things that have been really intrigued by scientists. Previous people believed that the brain acted as a structure that could help cool your blood or the liquids in your body. And now, however, we know that a lot more is actually done by the brain. It helps do a lot of different actions that we do. The function of the brain defines what it truly means to be alive and have an understanding of the things surrounding us. That's why it's one of the most important, if not most important organ to protect in your body. A quick fun fact about the brain is that it weighs 3.5 pounds, and it is surrounded by an outer tough layer and a softer inner layer, and these layers are called the meninges. I'll give y'all some time if you want to take notes on this. Okay, next slide. So let's first go over the major features of the brain. There are 3 major features. The first is the cerebrum, then it's the cerebellum, and finally we have the brainstem. So the cerebrum makes up most of the brain, around pretty much most of it, around 80% of it, and it is split into the right and the left hemispheres. Basically meaning on the right, one part of the cerebrum is on the right side of your brain, and the other is on the left side. This area has a lot of specialized functions, which we'll get into soon. The cerebrum is split into regions known as lobes based on their function, additionally to the hemispheres. The cerebellum is at the back of your brain, and this part of the brain helps to coordinate your movements and your posture. For example, to keep your back straight. Then finally, we have the brainstem. This is sort of like the vertical stalk, as you can see right here, seen at the bottom of the brain. This area is important for sleeping, eating, breathing, and making sure your heart is pumping. So basically, the brainstem does whatever we don't think about, but is necessary for us to be survived, and us to survive, yeah. So I'll leave the slide up for a bit. You want to take notes. Next, we will talk about the different lobes of the cerebrum. There are 4 lobes, or regions of the cerebrum, each with their own unique functions. The first is the frontal lobe. This is the region of the cerebrum in front of your brain. I'll show a diagram after we're done with the slide. And this area is involved with abstract thought, mood, motivation, decision-making, and emotional control. For example, if you're deciding to buy one shirt or the other, this information would be determined by the frontal lobe. Next, we have the parietal lobe. It is a region behind the frontal lobe, as you'll see in the diagram. And it is involved with taste, sensing outside forces, or these outside forces we called stimuli in the last week. So, and processing language. Now, next is the occipital lobe. This lobe is at the very back of your cerebrum, and it is involved with vision. For example, when the light falls onto your eye, this information is taken to the occipital lobe, and it allows us to see everything that's going on. For example, for you to see your computer screen and to read these slides. Then finally, we have the temporal lobe. This is near the sides of your brain right here, or if you might be familiar with the term, the temples, and it is involved with hearing, smell, emotion, and your memory. So overall, you don't really have to memorize all these different terms and their functions, but it's good to have a good generalization of them. So so whenever you get a question about it later on, you'll be able to think on the spot about it. So this is some of the main stuff I thought. So if you want to take notes on this, I'll give a second. Okay, so right here we have the picture. You can see the frontal lobes right here, the parietal lobe right behind it, occipital lobe at the back of your brain, and the temporal lobe as well on the sides. And then you can see right here the cerebellum marked by its many grooves, which is one way I distinguish between the occipital lobe in the red and the cerebellum with the different lines taught from it. Near the brainstem down here. Okay. And next, we'll talk about the different types of matter in the brain. You might have heard the term gray matter being used a lot, but the actual term for gray matter, it's the part of the matter that forms the top layer of your brain. And this top layer of your brain is known as the cortex. So the cortex is where a lot of the different processing occurs, and it's extremely important for, let's say, your sensory information. If you touch your finger, that is related to the cortex, that information. And beneath the gray matter is the white matter, and this area connects the different parts of the brain together. So you can see right here, there's the gray matter on the top and the white matter on the bottom. So while this picture might not look like the brain, it's actually part of the brain cut in half, and then we viewed that part of the brain. So imagine you have a brain, you cut it in half, and then this is what it looks like on the inside of all of it. So you can see a lot of different foldings in the brain. So that's how it makes it all really compact, because it folds it all. It's really unique about that. Okay. So I'll wait for a bit. Okay, I'll go to the next one then. Now we'll talk about how the brain gets its nutrients. Like most organs of the body, the brain gets its nutrients from the blood, or a set of liquids in your body that travels through you. However, sometimes bad substances can be in the blood, like bacteria that makes you sick, so the brain needs a way to protect itself from this. That is where the blood-brain barrier comes into play. It's a mouthful to say, so people just say BBB, because it's really hard to say blood-brain barrier without making a mistake. So it is made from cells that only allow specific substances to leave the blood and actually enter the brain. So you can see right here, this structure is forming like a barrier over the blood vessel. So the blood can't, only certain molecules from the blood can escape and enter the actual brain. This is a really important protective feature. So I'll give some time. Okay, I'll move on now. Okay, now another important function of the brain is sleep. So you might know sleep as whenever you close your eyes at night and wake up in the morning. Sleep, but the actual medical definition is the period that whenever we are unconscious and don't have aware of our surroundings, but we can easily be awakened by external forces from around us. For example, if someone tapped us a bunch of times on our finger or on our hand, then we would know and we would wake up. So this distinction about sleep is really important because it separates it from other forms of rest, for example, hibernation, because you can easily be awakened during sleep, but not really during hibernation, because like whenever bears hibernate for a really long time. So people might ask, why do we sleep, for example? So we sleep, or scientists believe we sleep, so whenever we rest, our energy can be replenished and we can have more energy in the morning. This is because as the day goes on, we're going through different activities. For example, going to soccer practice, maybe going to school, then playing video games, or going to a class, for example, like you're doing right now. So all of this takes up energy. So at the end of the day, it's important to rest so the energy can get back into our body and we can wake up again in the morning. So there are 4 stages of sleep. We won't get into the specifics of those stages because of time and because of the complexity of them, but you should know that in each stage, the brain has different levels of activity. Now, what do I mean by activity? What I mean by that is that whenever in different stages of sleep, and currently right now, the brain is going to emit more or less signals. So you can imagine in the beginning of the day, whenever you wake up, your brain's emitting a lot of signals because it has a lot of energy. However, as time goes on and the day goes on, you lose some of that energy because of the activities, and the brain's going to emit less signals, for example, whenever you sleep. And these less signals, or like the lesser amount of signals, you could say, being transmitted is what mainly causes you to fall into the stages of sleep. However, there's one stage of sleep that is pretty crucial to know. This stage of sleep is known as rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, as you may have heard some places. In this stage of sleep, you are in really deep sleep, like you can't be awakened. However, your eyes start to twitch a lot. And it's really fascinated a lot of scientists because it's like whenever you're doing a lot of sleep, but you have a lot of activity in your brain. People awaken in this stage of sleep often say that they are dreaming. So people might wonder, okay, so does this thing have, what's the function of REM sleep? Is it to help with your dreams? Some people say it's to help you remember your memories and keep them in your brain for longer. I'll leave this slide up for a bit. People want to take notes. Oh, oops, okay. So now we'll talk about another type of structure in the brain. This one is, or these structures we'll go over are called the thalamus and the hypothalamus. So the thalamus acts, let's say, as a gatekeeper for sensory signals. So let's say, I'm gonna use this analogy a lot, but I tap my hand with my finger. This sensory information doesn't just go through the brain first, automatically into the areas. However, it first goes to the thalamus, and the thalamus selects which information we want to go onto the brain and which one we want to just keep not there anymore and make it disappear. The reason for this is we have a lot of different things that are constantly affecting us. And if we have all that information sent to our brain, it's going to overwhelm us. So the brain needs to select which ones it actually needs to care about. For example, feeling a slight breeze on your hand might not be more important, for example, as someone kicking your leg. The brain's going to actively select that information. Now, the next thing is called the hypothalamus, which you probably, it's important not to get confused between the two. It is near the thalamus, of course, and it is important in sending signals in your blood that controls organs throughout the body. So let's say it helps you, the hypothalamus releases these different chemicals that help you grow, for example. So it's really important with that. And it's also important in making sure your body temperature is normal. So you can see, right, you don't have to worry about the other types of things right here, but just note the hypothalamus is right here, and the thalamus is right there. You don't have to worry about these two. We'll get into the hippocampus pretty soon. Okay. Now we'll get into the hippocampus. So the hippocampus, as you can see right here, looks like a horseshoe. So it has an important role in short-term memory and long-term memory. What I mean by that is it helps convert your short-term memory into long-term memory. For example, if you're doing a class, for example, this one, and you want to memorize certain stuff that you can help down later on in life, or for at least a longer period of time, the hippocampus is really important in converting whatever you see right here into your long-term memory so you don't forget it. So it's also a part of a group of structures important in emotion and your memory. So whenever you study neuroscience more, you'll see that emotion and memory are pretty linked together, and emotion can affect memory. For example, if you had a bad experience with a certain memory or event, then that emotion is going to affect what you remember of it. And if you had a good experience or a positive experience with that event, your emotion relating to that affects how much you actually remember from it, or what you actually remember. Probably remember more of the good parts of it. So yeah, now that leads us to the next part about memory in general. So as you know, there's short-term memory and there's long-term memory. So loss of memory is called amnesia. There are two types of amnesia you should know. The first type of amnesia, which I didn't put here, is whenever you forget everything from the past, but you can remember stuff later on in the future. The next type of thing is you forget everything in the future, or you can't make any new memories, but you still remember everything in the past. So it's like two sides of a coin. They're two opposite things, you could say. There are two more types of memory other than short-term and long-term, and that's called explicit memory. This is the ability to describe past events and recall facts. For example, if I were to ask you a question about a previous week in neuroscience class, you'd be able to recall something, and that's explicit memory. Implicit memory is knowing how to do a process. For example, to cook a type of food or to tie your shoes. Because while you're doing that process, that's what implicit memory is. And the transformation of short-term memory into long-term memory, as we saw what the hippocampus does, if you remember, is called memory consolidation. Consolidation, it's a fancier term to know, so you don't have to memorize that term, but it's good to know. I'll leave this up for a bit, and anyone wants to take notes. Okay. All right, so yeah. Now let's get into the second part of the lesson. In this part of the lesson, we'll go over the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is necessarily like a cylinder of nervous tissue in your spine, and it starts at the brainstem and it goes down your spine. It is around 45 centimeters long in adults, and it's around as thick as your pinky finger. So you can imagine it's pretty thin and stretches over a really long distance. So the spinal cord has a couple a lot of functions actually, but we'll go over a few main of them. The first function is that it has its neurons that, as you may have inferred, can help transmit information up and down the cord. So transmitting information up and down the cord allows for information, or let's say you hitting your leg, for example, that would be carried up your spinal cord to your brain for you to actually see and actually feel that it's happening there. And it also allows us to move. So it goes the other way. From the brain, it sends signals down your spinal cord that go to your muscles, which allow you to move and allow you to do other things. And then finally, it's really important in reflexes. So you might know reflexes is something that happens automatically. We'll get into some of the actual reflexes that happen later on, but know that the spinal cord is crucial for them to happen. There are 4 regions of the spinal cord from top to bottom as well. So yeah, 4 main regions that, for example, in the upper region of the spinal cord, that affects the areas in the upper part of your body. For areas in the middle part of the spinal cord, that affects areas in the middle part of your body. And then you can see what happens later on. So at the lower part of your spinal cord, that could affect your legs, for example, at the lower part of your body. So that's how it corresponds and how the body organizes the information. So these are the 4 regions. You don't have to know the terms, but it's cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral. And I don't really consider coccygeal here, but just know that these are the main regions for your spinal cord. It only goes up to lumbar. But you don't have to know these terms at all. Just know that this is how it looks. It goes down here. I was trying to find a diagram that had it in this view, but I couldn't find one without these terms in there. You don't have to know these, but just know that this is how it looks like. Now we'll learn about the spinal cord pathways. So there are multiple pathways from the brain going down the spinal cord, as we've seen, to help you move, or from the spinal cord going up to the brain, for example, to learn about different senses. We call these different pathways tracks. So pathways that go from the spinal cord to the brain, or they're going up, are called ascending, because ascending means to go up, or ascension. And these carry sensory information like we've seen, like if you touch your hand. The next, there's pathways that go from the brain to the spinal cord and are known as descending pathways because they go downward. And descending means to go down. These carry signals that would help you move your muscles, for example. Now, next, we will talk about reflexes. So the reflexes of your muscles are known as somatic reflexes. You don't have to know this term, but just it's a pretty good term to know, but it's not necessary. So know that so that's what it is. So a reflex starts with a sensor that let's say senses something, and then it sends this information to the sensory neurons, which we covered in the last class. These are going to be in the you can just look at the website as well if you don't know. And these sensory neurons can then send this information to other neurons, which then send this back to the motor neurons that control the muscles. And so that's how the reflex loop works. Some things can trigger reflex, or something that can actually trigger a reflex, or let's say stretching your muscles, or pain to your body. If, for example, you stepped on a piece of glass, your reflexes would immediately remove your leg from that piece of glass so you don't get hurt. A common example that you might have went to the doctor's office for, or you might have heard about, is the knee-jerk reflex. This should be right here, yes. So it's whenever the doctor gets a hammer, sort of, and they tap your knee with it. When they do this tap with your knee, it goes through a lot of neurons, and then it signals this reflex to move your knee forward, and let's say like you're kicking. So doctors do this test to make sure that your reflexes are working. So pretty important there. So yeah, then I think this should be the last thing we're talking about before we get into questions and problems, but it's injury to the spinal cord. Around 10,000 people each year get affected by spinal cord injuries. And these injuries are serious because, as we have seen, the spinal cord carries information to help you move. They can also be due to another organism that has invaded your body. For example, polio, which we'll get into more detail in another lesson. But polio is a disease that you guys most likely got vaccinated for whenever you were really young, and polio makes you so you can't move. Okay, so now we're on to, so this is pretty much the end of the actual content of it. So if anyone has any questions, you can post them in chat, and then we'll get into the practice problems. Actually, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do the practice problems first, and then we can ask the questions. So let's try to get these done quickly, or relatively quickly. So for your answers, just put them in the chat, or put them, if you can directly message me, put them there, or just put it, if you can't do that, then do it to everyone. But the first question is, what are the 3 main regions of the brain? You can just type your answers in chat. Okay, since no one's really answering, I'll just go to the answer. So the answer to this is the cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brainstem. There are 3 main regions. This was back in the first slide, so if anyone wants to go back to that, just feel free to tell me. Next, actually, yeah, so what structure prevents, what structure prevents bad substances from reaching the brain through the blood? So this one is the blood-brain barrier, or the BBB, as we talked about. And this prevents, as we said, the bad stuff from reaching your brain from the blood. Okay, so that's all the practice problems we have there. So now it's just, just go ahead and ask any question you have, or anything about this, or any criteria, or any suggestions you have for future classes, or what you thought about this class. Was it too fast-paced, or too slow-paced? Information was too hard? Anything, just put it in chat. So yeah. Anything at all. I went a little too fast. All right, so that's my bad. Do you want me to go back to some certain slides, or? Oh yeah, so I'll be posting all of these slides right here in case you want to go back and look at them. But so yeah, I'll keep that in mind for next time. I'll go a lot slower. Thank you for that. Anyone else have any other questions or comments, concerns? We have 12 minutes left of class, so feel free to ask anything. We have a lot of time. Can we leave? So the class is going to end at 7:45, but we're having a period of questioning times, and I can ask more practice problems if y'all want to do. So yeah, I can ask some more practice problems, or if anyone wants you to go back to certain slides, please tell me so you can actually get it. So yeah, I would recommend saying in case someone else asked the question, then and if it was the same question that you had, then you could ask that. You don't know. So does anyone want to talk about something, for example, relating to this, or? Does anyone want to go back to specific slides? Because it's really important to go back and review the information so you don't forget it. So yeah, please ask questions. Yeah. Would everyone, so someone can type in chat, would y'all be fine if I ask some more practice problems? Yeah, someone type in chat yes or no, so I know. Yes? Okay. So yeah, if I'm going to ask some problems, put your answers in chat so we can see what other people are saying. Let me think of one. Let's see. How what is the main structure that is important for your memory in your brain? Gray matter? Gray matter does actually help. So gray matter, what it is let me scroll up. So yeah, gray matter is just the outside part of the brain. It does have some work into the actual memory because it just encompasses everything. But the main thing that I was trying to look for was the hippocampus. But that's still technically right, you could say, because it helps coordinate different stuff from your brain, and that can be translated into memory. But the hippocampus is the main part of your brain that's important for memory. Okay, so I'm going to ask another one. Does anyone remember how many stages of sleep there were? Yeah, even if you okay. So let me try to find what the sleep part was. Sleep, there are 4 stages of sleep. I'll stay here for some time. So yeah, there are the 4 stages of sleep. At the beginning of sleep, it starts to whenever you're in light sleep, and then it goes down so that it's more in deep sleep, for example. So, yeah. Oh, actually, another thing I wanted to talk about sleep was another reason for why we sleep. I don't think I went over it in the slides, but so whenever for like previous animals, right, that we evolved from, whenever they slept, it allowed them to stay in an area where they were safer. For example, instead of hunting during the nighttime, because in the nighttime there were a lot of predators that could eat them as prey. So while sleeping, it allowed for them to find a safe place to stay and for them to stay through the night without having to constantly worry about animals and other things trying to eat them. So, and that's why whenever you're in a state that's like more vulnerable, for example, if you have a fever, you're gonna want to sleep more and rest. So that's just like something that's like an evolutionary part where we've had for a long time and done it. So when like babies, they sleep a lot because they're more vulnerable. Whenever you have a fever and you're sick, you're gonna sleep a lot as well. So that just comes down from evolution. So that's another reason people think we sleep. Oh yeah, I'll ask another one. Um, Nate. So maybe name as many of the lobes of the brain as you can. You can name 1, 2, 3, however many you want of the lobes of the brain. Oh, the lobes. Right here, the lobes of the cerebrum. That, yeah, they're called the lobes. So, yeah, it was the frontal one, the parietal lobe, except yeah, temporal one is another lobe. So yeah, that's good. The temporal lobe helps you with motion, memory, hearing, smell, all those important parts, aspects. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to go to some certain slides? And like some interesting slides you want to look at? Or does anyone want to talk about anything relating to the neuroscience or the brain? That could be a 5 minutes left in the class. So oh, you're having tech issues? Wait, is my microphone better now? Or oh, okay, my bad. It might have just been because my microphone was not next to my mouth. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, next time I'll try to get a better microphone so it's easier. So yeah, does anyone want to go back to certain slides or talk about anything? No. What about anyone else? Because if you have any questions, then that would be pretty good. So there's a lot to talk about. So the fourth slide. Okay, let me go back to what that was. One, two, three, four. Wait, is this one you're talking about, or this one? This one right here, or the one before that? Okay, yeah, this one. Okay, I'll stay here for a bit. Tell me whenever you are good. And if you have any other slides, please tell that you want to get to. One after this. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's cool. So there's around 2 minutes left. So yeah, any other thing you want to go over? Yeah. So yeah, that's around, yep, so a couple more minutes left. So yeah, there's like 1 more minute left. So any last minute things really anyone wants to talk about, you can get through. Anyone wants to see a slide, something that they forgot. Okay, so just a little, yeah, so there's a little under a minute time left. So yeah, class will be ending soon, around like 30 seconds. So yeah. I hope this class was good. in the next class, I'll probably try to take it a lot more slower. So thanks for that feedback. And yeah, so it's 7:45, so class is over. Next class will be, oh yeah, no problem. And next class, we'll be going over the sensory and different senses, such as vision, hearing, taste. So yeah, that should be it. So, yep, bye. I'm going to leave the Zoom meeting now. So yeah.